Marcos is sick.
Marco's sick. Oh, sorry to hear that.
You know Kirsten,
Got it.
but I didn't hear from her. But I might have heard from somewhere she was out on a trip.
I had heard that too.
Yeah.
Well, thanks everyone so much for being here. We're going to go ahead and get started. I'm going to call this meeting to order at 6 p.m. I'd like to announce that the meeting is being recorded. And Jonathan, can you call the roll?
Yeah. Director Brent.
Here.
Dr. Bertrand.
Here.
Dr. Flaherty.
Here.
Dr. Aguilar is absent. Director Freeman.
Here.
Dr. Topliff.
Here.
Dr. Deschler is absent.
Right. Before we begin, we would like to acknowledge the Chumash people, who are the traditional custodians of this land. We pay our respects to the Chumash elders, past, present, and future, who call this place, Anascoyo, the land that Isla Vista sits upon, their home. We are proud to continue their tradition of coming together and growing as a community. We thank the Chumash community for their stewardship and support, and we look forward to strengthening our ties as we continue our relationship of mutual respect and understanding. With that, we're going to move to the consent agenda. Do any directors have items that they would wish to pull?
No, thank you.
All right, seeing none, does anyone have a motion?
I'll move to approve the consent agenda.
I'll second.
Made by Topliff, seconded by Flaherty. Is there any public comment on the motion? Seeing none, we'll go to a roll call vote.
Dr. Brent.
Yes.
Dr. Flaherty.
Yes.
Dr. Bertrand.
Yes.
Dr. Freeman.
Yes.
Director Deschler.
Yes.
Just here. And then Director Topliff.
Yes.
All right, motion passes 6-0. Let the record show Director Deschler is here. Now we're going to move to the public comment period. So this is the time for any member of the public that would like to speak on a matter that is not on today's agenda to speak. The board will not take action on any item not on the agenda except as provided for by law. Do we have any off-agenda comments? Please hit the raise hand button or indicate in the chat. I see a hand first from Mark, so I'm going to go to you first, Mark.
Thank you. Yeah, I just have three quick non-agenda talking points. One is I briefly mentioned this in the chat of a previous CSD meeting, but I just wanted to take a quick moment to inform the board that the governor has vetoed AB 122 and AB 1238. Each of those respectively would have, the first one would have had been this bicycle safety stop. That's the one that the IVCSD endorsed. And the second one was the decriminalization of jaywalking. And so those were both vetoed by the governor. So I want to let the board know that. Second thing I want to do is just kind of acknowledge the fire and the burning down of the structure in Isla Vista, which was really sad because that was a really historic property. I'm not saying it was a nice property, but I had been in there. I had seen musicians in there. It was one of the older buildings that we had in Isla Vista, and it was sad to see it go. And then the last thing I wanted to just bring to the board's attention, which was someone posted on Reddit the Dennis McFadden's resignation letter from the design review committee after he had been on that committee for 15 years, and he did it in opposition to the Munger building. And so I wanted to acknowledge that. I'll put a link to the post in the chat. And yeah, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you for your comments, Mark. Are there any other members of the public that wish to speak on items not on today's agenda? Seeing none, we'll close the public comment period, and we're going to move to our first action item, 4.1, the Isla Vista Community Mobility Plan Professional Services Agreement with KTUA. I'll hand it over to Jonathan.
Excellent, thank you. I'm really excited to present approval of this professional services agreement. We had 4 applicants for the STEP grant process. Let me put this in the chat just so you can follow along. We had 4 people apply for our STEP grant process, and so it was a competitive application. It was more than we expected. We were almost in the, having the pessimistic thought, what if we only get one person apply? We had four. It was very competitive. We interviewed. Our committee was consisting of ourselves, IVCSD Youth Project, Santa Barbara MTD, County of Santa Barbara, and SB Bike / Coast. So that was our interview committee. It's a subset of our larger STEP grant group. And so that's the group that was selected to hold the interviews. We used the criteria rubric that the board approved in the request for proposals. And so we had two applicants that scored, the highest to qualify for interview. And we moved on to the interview process. And based on the results of the interview, KTUA scored the highest on our rubric. And we felt just very positive overall, meeting with them. So rubric was good. They hit all the criteria, and we also had just a good dynamic in meeting with them. So it was great. We were really happy to have found a consultant that met all the criteria that we had, and that one that we feel like will work well in the community, which was also one of the rubric points, but maybe one of the most important. The proposal is for $74,000. That's what we had put out. And we worked with them to tweak their proposal to make it our intention was to have it lean more heavily towards producing a high quality existing conditions report and needs assessment, rather than have the consultants work on community engagement work that Sydney is taking charge on doing. So we get to save consultant dollars for that technical work that we're not able to do. And so, yeah, I'm recommending it. I don't think KTUA was able to make it today. We had our session earlier today where we were getting to work on the nuts and bolts of the reports and the next steps of the grant. So I don't think they're able to make it, but yeah, we're really excited to propose this for approval. And we did fix the issue on section 10 of the agreement where ownership of materials, we will own the materials that we pay for to produce. So thank you for the catch on fixing that. So that's fixed, and yeah, that's pretty much it. I'd like to take any questions.
Any questions for members of the board? Well, seeing none, I don't have any questions. I will just want to say a big thank you to staff and our STEP grant subcommittee that evaluated all these proposals. 6 is a lot to evaluate, and 2 interviewees. I'm very excited about this. This is a big step in us making the STEP grant mobility plan happen. And I know that the consultant has done work in neighboring communities on the South Coast. So I'm very excited to support us moving forward with this.
I'll move to approve this agreement.
Motion by Topliff. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Moved and seconded. So I'll allow for opening up for public comment now. Do any members of the public have requests to speak? I see a hand from Mark. Go ahead.
Again, I just want to appreciate Jonathan's last comments regarding Sydney being the main point of contact for kind of outreach and public outreach, because when I first saw KTUA being proposed as the organization, I actually had a little bit of a concern. KTUA did the circulation plan at UCSB, and I would say saw one of the most disappointing outreach events I've ever seen, frankly. It was at Corwin Pavilion, and a solid 7 students showed up over a course of 6 hours in an attempt to get feedback of all the various locations that UCSB had trouble with circulation. So yeah, so I want to appreciate where their strengths are, and then also doing our best effort for public outreach in our own way, because students, students just I mean, I don't think government meetings are really great for public outreach to begin with, but I think students are especially a tough demographic to get to. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you for that comment, Mark. Are there any other members of the public with comments on this item? Well, seeing none then, we have a motion on the table, so I'll bring it back to the board and we'll go to a roll call vote.
Director Brandt,
Yes.
Flaherty,
Yes.
Bertrand,
Yes.
Freeman,
Yes.
Deschler,
Yes.
Toppler.
Yes.
All right, motion passes 6-0. Thanks again, Jonathan, and thanks again, Sydney, for enabling us to have such a great public outreach component of our organization to where we can focus that staff time on the technical stuff. All right, the next item is 4.2, letter to the IVRPD board on Isla Vista safety stations. So myself and Director Bertrand wanted to bring forward this letter just to make a formal request to the partners at the Isla Vista Recreation and Park District regarding this program, so that the board is aware of the request and is able to evaluate it. As has been mentioned by our staff before, working with UCSB, our staff has evaluated a number of different locations in the Isla Vista area for an expansion of the safety station program, and has identified Greek Park because of its closeness to student and family populations and its coverage of the northern Ivy area, where we don't have coverage right now currently with the two locations, one at Little Acorn and one at Sea Lookout Park. I see Ethan's got a hand, so I'll hand it over to you if you have any thoughts you want to share.
Yeah, I'll just mention that we funded the expansion of this program in our budget for this fiscal year. We obviously have a very strong partnership with UCPD in providing this program. It's been very well received out in the community, and it's made a real difference. So I'm excited about the expansion. And just to keep moving this forward, I think it's good that we're sending this letter. Additionally, I know we want to be more collaborative with our fellow representatives at the IVRPD. So I think it's good that our board is engaging directly with their board on this priority. And I also want to thank IVRPD for their partnership in this program over the past few years, providing a great space for the safety stations to work out of. So overall, I'm glad that we have this today, and hopefully we'll be able to open this additional location in the very near future so that we can expand service.
Thank you for that, Director Bertrand. And staff, is there anything else that you'd want to add to this?
Nothing. No. I know that our IVRPD is I've talked to their staff about this, and they are working on bringing a contract to us. So I think this is still good to do, though, like for the reasons said.
Got it. Well, thank you for that. Are there any questions from board members? Director Deschler.
It would be helpful for me to understand a little bit more about the program in terms of, I understand the relationship between UCPD and IVCSD, but I guess, there already exists two other locations where where the district has a partnership with Ivy Rec and Parks. And so, do we have a formal does the IVCSD have a formal agreement with IVRPD on those other two locations? And is it, so there's already a precedent for IVCSD and IVRPD to enter into an agreement for another location? I guess that's my question. I'm just trying to understand what the mechanism is between the two districts.
Yeah, that's a great question. We don't have an agreement for the other two locations. That was never something IVRPD made a request of us to do in the past. Their board just voted to allow this program, to sponsor the program, I think was the word they used, in 2017 when we first launched the safety stations. So when we made the request, our board decided this back in April, May, June, and we finalized it in July. And right after, I had reached out to the Rec and Park District to get us going to do a site visit and establish the third site. And it was in September when they requested that we do an agreement instead of what we had, I was moving forward as if we were gonna do it the previous way. But that's when they said, let's pause and we'd like to do an agreement for the third site. But the other two are currently still going without an agreement, without, they honored those. But they said to go to the third, they'd like an agreement.
And what would an agreement entail? Is that a monetary agreement? What type of agreement? Do we know anything about that?
I don't know. I haven't seen it yet.
Isn't it kind of bizarre that we're operating two other sites without an agreement? And now the third site, they want an agreement? That seems so strange to me, but maybe I'm missing something.
Not sure if there's a question there, but comment taken. I'll go to Director Bertrand and then Director Freeman.
Yeah, I appreciate Jonathan's explanation and Kirsten's question. And I mean, I agree with the statement that we didn't have this type of agreement before, but when we brought this to their board, it was thoroughly vetted and approved and supported. So while this is a different type of agreement, like just for anyone who's watching at home, everything we've done has been with their full authorization up to this point. And it was a very deliberate process when we first started this about 4 years ago. So just so that part's clear. But like Jonathan said, with this request that we received a couple months after Jonathan's initial outreach to IVRPD about this, we just want to take that seriously and get it done as quickly as possible.
Thank you, Director Bertrand. Director Freeman.
Figured I would do that on mute. So a couple things to bring up. One is that because it's come up in passing of the idea, we've now expanded the funding for this program in the process of going into this third location. I continue to hope that we can look at the efficiency of the program, and I'd been interested in more locations, but I don't know if I'd been interested in spending more money on it. So I just, whenever that comes up, I poke at it. Sorry. So I'm responded one of the questions that's kind of come up here about the agreement. So my understanding is that this is it's not that there's an agreement for the third location and that's separate from not having an agreement for the first two locations. I think there's been concern that has come up about the lack of agreement for all locations. And so the idea is to look into, and you can imagine there's now new staff at the Parks District, and they've been through a lot in the last 2 years. And so they're trying to figure out how to organize everything. And so it feels, to be clear from my perspective, it feels fine that they're looking for an agreement here, how to structure all of this. And the vague understanding that I have is that there's concerns about liability and things like that. Oftentimes, I mean, we stare at liability as well here at the IVCSD, and we're bringing people into various areas and bringing people into our spaces. And so to the extent to which there's the police interacting with people, I can appreciate the thought process. I'm a little curious about the process that has gone on here. So we're writing a letter to the board of the Parks District in order to, with a relatively specific request, I think. I appreciate that. I mean, there's room for flexibility. So it's not that it's a rigid letter or anything, but the idea that the IVCSD has spent time talking with its partner, the Foot Patrol and Sheriff's Department, UCPD, in order to look into where to station this new safety station, and kind of we, the two of us, have come to this idea that Greek Park is the place to put it. Whereas I feel like that's the kind of conversation that before there's a lot of expectation between okay, well, IVCSD wants it in Greek Park. We're sending a letter to the IVRPD saying we want it in Greek Park. And that's the kind of thought process that I would think that the Parks District would get in on earlier. And so the wording I might have done in this letter is that we're interested in collaborating with the Parks District in order to look into extended locations. We would like to have a dialogue between the staff of the two districts and UCPD to look into this. Another idea that I've had is that in the past we've had joint board meetings. Maybe instead of us writing a letter and tossing it over there, we also pitch the idea of how about in a few weeks we have a joint board meeting, and then we can discuss these issues together. to see the thought process here. This is a person on the IVCSD talking about parks, which but to kind of seed an idea here of why I think it's important to have the parks people talking about parks. So I live right by Greek Park, and my impression of walking past Greek Park is that it's used at night. It's somewhat actively between the lighting in the area from the surrounding buildings, and they were working on Jacob was looking into actually having lit. There's tables there. There's the basketball court is there, and when I walk past it, it's often used. And I actually would kind of think that, well, maybe that's actually not where you want to put a tent with a bunch of CSOs, because it might cause people to go like, I don't know if I want to be there right now, and then they kind of walk away. So, but that's the kind of decision that, like, no, me tossing out something like an interesting concern, that's the kind of thing that I think that the Parks District would have a lot of input on with relation to what location it should be in. Yeah, I just like the process here just feels a little bit stilted to me of us having a specific ask, a specific request with a narrow location that we're now writing a letter to kind of try to poke at the Parks District to please agree to this, as opposed to the next step being, okay, well, let's actually have a collaborative dialogue about where this location should be in your parks, as an opportunity that we kind of looking at a location that isn't a park, which is why we're wanting to bring you in, or maybe having a joint meeting. So, yeah.
Director Freeman. I just want to throw in something, which is I think the goal of this is to make a formal request, just like we did the last time when we wanted to start the safety station program and engage with the board, so that the board can have their say, just like they do with other programs that come to them and ask for sponsorship. But I did have a question for staff. Have you heard about any concerns from Park District staff about the location?
No, we never got to really talk about that. We had invited them to meet with us in August to go visit the site to assess it with UCPD, and we never heard back until September when we got the request for a contract.
Got it. I see a hand from Director Bertrand. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to give our staff a lot of credit for being really proactive and collaborative on this. I know Jonathan started the overall discussion back in April, and both our staff and UCPD have reached out a lot. And I originally spoke with our staff about putting this on our agenda a few meetings ago because, like I said before, this is funded and it's a priority, and we see the need. There are a lot of safety needs in IB at night right now. So with the continual delay, and also understanding that I think this is a priority for our elected partners, that's why I'm interested in pushing this forward. It's a great program. It's been successful. All of us can be proud of it, but now we just have to get it done. And we've been very collaborative, and like Jonathan said, no concerns have been shared with us, just unfortunately delay. So I think our intention here is just to continue to move forward on our promise to the community that we are going to do this with our partners.
Thank you for those comments, Ethan. Are there other comments from directors? All right, not seeing any, I'll open up public comment. Do any members of the public have any requests to speak? All right, seeing none, I'll bring it back to the board. Sounds like we're ready for a motion. Does anyone want to make it?
I'll move approval of the letter to the Isla Vista Recreation and Park District Board of Directors.
Made by Bertrand. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Seconded by Topliff. So if there's no other public comment, not seeing anything in the chat or any hands raised, I think we'll go ahead to roll call vote.
Director Brandt,
Yes.
Director Flaherty,
Yes.
Director Bertrand,
Yes.
Director Freeman,
No.
Director Deschler?
I want to say yes, but I also want to make a suggestion. How can I do that?
I would say for the future, speak up when I ask if you have comments. But I'm happy to pause the motion if you do have something that you want to add.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I would recommend that the general manager of the IVRPD be copied on the letter.
Got it. I think is that friendly with the maker and the seconder of the motion?
Absolutely. Good suggestion.
Great suggestion. Sorry to tease you, Kirsten. Okay, so we will have a substitute motion, which includes the letter and the edits with the GMCC. And I think we'll go to the roll call vote again.
Cool. We'll just revote. Director Brandt,
Yes.
Flaherty, Bertrand,
Yes.
Deschler,
Yes.
Topliff,
Yes.
Freeman.
No.
I don't know if mine is mine, but mine is yes. Sorry.
All right. Cool. Motion passes 5-1. Now we're going to move to item 4.3. This is the Spring Festival Ad Hoc Committee. And I'll hand it over to staff.
Yes, so I didn't get a chance to have a memo for this yet, but I would think even that to even prepare something and start moving forward on what we might do, we should get our committee together, which we had formed right before COVID to get going. And then we were put on pause. So recommending reforming this ad hoc committee so that I could work with those folks to start putting a proposal together for a future board meeting on what to do for the Spring Festival.
Excellent. Thank you for bringing this forward. Do you want to remind us who the previous members of the committee were?
Oh man, I don't think I have that written down right now. I think it must have been Jay, Christy, and you. If I had to remember.
It's been a long time in my memory too, so I'm not sure. But just curious for when we reconstituted and ask for nominations. But that's good to know.
I don't remember being on such a committee, although I also feel like we often form committees and they never have meetings. So it might simply be that happened.
I actually don't have a list for this. I have a list of, I've brought up my list of committees and who's on them, and I actually don't have a list for this one. So we might not have even moved forward.
You got it. Yeah. Because I don't have a whole lot of recollection of this either. So that's good to know. Any other questions from board members?
Only thing I'd say is I know that you and I were on it, Spencer. I don't remember who our third was, but we did meet on this.
Got it. Is there anyone on the board? It sounds like I've heard some interest. Is there any official interest in wanting to be on this committee?
I would like to nominate Catherine to be on the committee. Because she's hip and cool and a student, and I think we need that perspective.
Well,
not that you all aren't, of course, but.
Well, I agree 100%. Catherine, do you accept the nomination?
Yes.
Any other interests or nominations?
I'm happy to help, but I've been able to serve on a number of these, so I'm also happy to step back and participate at the board level. Either way.
Got it. Well, glad to hear that. I kind of feel the same way for this, where I feel like I've got a very good knowledge of the issues, so would be happy to serve, but also don't want to stand in anyone else's way if there's other interest. And I'll remind folks that we're not approving anything because the way that the ad hoc committees works is I'll appoint in the interim after the meeting. So our vote today will be to form the committee, and I'll announce the appointments at our next board meeting. So with that said, I think I'll open up public comment if there are any public comments on this item. Right, seeing none, I'll close public comment and we'll go to the board. Is anyone ready to make a motion?
Can I make a comment?
Oh, yes, go ahead.
Spencer, would you have interest in joining me on this and being nominated?
Yes, I would be happy to be nominated for this committee.
Awesome. And then do we want 3 or just 2?
I think 3 would be ideal. 2 would work as well. I'm also happy to just talk with folks offline and see if there's interest. Ethan, I know you expressed interest as well. Would you be interested in serving?
I'm interested, but perhaps at the next meeting when we have all our members here, you can do a last call. And depending on that, I'm happy either way. But let's wait until if possible, until we have everyone, just so everyone can be considered.
I think that sounds prudent. Okay, so is anyone ready to make a motion just to form the ad hoc committee?
I'll make that motion.
Made by Topliff. Is there a second?
I'll second.
All right. And so I think we did public comment. We'll go back to Jonathan for a roll call vote.
Dr. Brandt,
Yes.
Flaherty,
Yes.
Bertrand,
Yes.
Freeman,
Yes.
Dashler,
Yes.
Topliff.
Yes.
All right. Motion passes. And the appointments will be announced at the next meeting after we, I think we can do a last call during reports as far as appointments goes. Okay, now we're going to move to the next item, which is Isla Vista Community Center interim policies.
All right, well, this is an exciting one to propose. So this is what we're turning around right now, is really interim now through January for the Isla Vista Community Center and Community Room. If you go into the folder that's attached, there's 3 things in there. There's the memo from last time, and then there's a spreadsheet that's like a matrix, and then there's a draft section 12 district facilities policies. So the district facilities policies document includes the matrix, and it is essentially the old policies, but they've been updated and spruced up to meet our current situation. And again, our temporary current situation. So I even put a note in the policy itself that this will be updated in January. So I think I'll share my screen on this one for the matrix. Let me just do that. So here's what I ended up coming up with. There's a lot of, there's a lot of other things in the draft section 12 policies. I can get into them, but most of the new stuff is this matrix. The way I ended up splitting it up, and again, this is just for now. We can keep this if we really like it, and we can totally change it in January. But I split it up between public and nonprofit versus private and individuals. And then intensity, high, medium, low for each one. And that's because, what I said in the memo that, our public and nonprofit partners, they just have more capacity. They might have used the space in the past. We've worked with them. And private organizations and individuals just take, extra work to, bring a new user into the space and get them up to speed. And they might not have event planning experience the same way a formal organization does. So that was like the logic between the split, and then the high through low was, something else we discussed, where, high intensity things may be maybe more work. And so they have different requirements. So high intensity, I just defined as events with more than 50 people with moderate to high amount of physical activity, parties, concerts, conferences, dances, etc. Medium is up to 50. with some physical interaction. So receptions or exercise class, workshops, performances, people moving around, but not that much. And then low intensity is like meetings, social services, art exhibits, other kinds of classes, and less than 30 people. So that's what I put out there. And again, we're going to see how this works. If these are not our perfect numbers, we will adjust them. So I'm going to just go down through this list of requirements based on what we talked about last time and kind of the logic between all of it. Indemnity and liability waiver, that seemed to have the most support last time as the simplest way to get someone to use the room and cover some risk. So I put yes for all users. We'll just sign the indemnity liability waiver because it doesn't take anything to do that. It's a signature. So we're not creating a barrier, I think, there. Insurance required, I put yes for that on only high intensity events. So if you're having a concert or something big, a conference, you're probably already an organization that has insurance. And for something that big, let's just say insurance required. Security deposit, same for the high intensity ones. Yes and no for the rest. And then providing an insurance option, I put no here because we're not going to do that between now and January, but it might be an option in the future. So I wanted to leave it there as something that we might work to have. Since it's another way to make it easier for groups to potentially use it. In terms of fees, no fees for public and nonprofit organizations. And then there will be fees for private organizations and individuals, but then there will be a fee waiver for Isla Vista residents and Isla Vista focused institutions. So where did we put the definition for that here? Isla Vista residents, they would verify, Ross helped provide this different ways to verify. I put self-attestation though as an additional option because not everyone might have a utility bill, but they live in IV. And then organizations, they would have to have a primary commitment to Isla Vista and its residents and be primarily located in the IV census designated place. So that's how you would qualify for the fee waiver at this time. COVID-19 hosts must require masks. We're requiring masks, but the host must help enforce requiring masks, and they would require vaccine being required. And that's something we're putting on the users to do. And we'd ask them, what's your plan to require vaccines, and to put it in their event advertisement on our community calendar, vaccines required. So we don't have a system. Like if we had said vaccines required and we will run that, we wouldn't be able to have events for a while because it'd take me a while to get a vaccine requirement system. But if we ask the host to do it as they, manage their guests, and then they agree with us and they provide us here's what we're going to do, that can at least meet that goal, but in a faster way. And then reservation notice. So 1 week notice, that's the shortest amount of time, is for low intensity things for public nonprofit. But then 2 weeks, I moved it to 2 weeks for private and for medium public, and then 1 month for privates that are doing medium and high, and then publics that are doing high intensity, just because a month would be at least the minimum amount of time to plan a large event. And then site visit, that would mean I'm requiring that for pretty much every group except the low intensity nonprofits, just so that, most of these users are new. And so I want to be able to be there to help introduce them to the space and make sure there's, all clear understanding. And then staff on site, which is required for high intensity events, because again, it's a high intensity use of the space. We want to just make sure it's safe. So that's pretty much what I'm thinking. Now through January, our community advisory board and new staff should update these, but most of this general rules and regulations section, I this is the old rules and regulations. This is what the rules and regulations have been since 2017. I made updates. I just mainly small updates, but it's all the ones from before. I added our COVID-19 policies, which is, users utilizing the space must require vaccinations of all guests and provide the district with a plan for doing so to confirm reservation. So I hope this meets the simplicity. There will be a simple version of all this to display when we do our reservation website page. But yeah, and these are the definitions that we put up. So I'd love to take any questions or comments on these. And
Thanks for that presentation, Jonathan. I saw a hand earlier from Carrie, so I'll go over to you.
Thank you. And thank you for the nice work that you did on this, Jonathan. I think that you've done a nice job of thinking it through and laying it out. I had a question about somebody using the space to do a for-profit event, something where they were charging money for people to come. And is that something that would be possible? And would that person then also be eligible to have no fee charged to them, but they'd be charging fees for the people who use the center, basically?
that's a good point. So I didn't consider users who would be charging. It kind of falls under private organizations, but I didn't split it out as a separate rule. But it's a really great point that I don't think we should have the fee waiver available for people who are charging at all.
Charging money.
Yeah,
That makes sense too. And then I really don't understand the whole insurance thing. And as you probably heard from my comments last meeting, I have a chip on my shoulder still from when we had to cancel the skateboard competition at the Spring Festival in 1974 because of the insurance problems. But we have insurance, or somebody's carrying insurance on the community center, right? And so that there, like, these events are specific exclusions, or why if we have insurance, do we also need to require it of people who are in the center? That to me, the model seems screwy.
Yeah, I think what I think we should get to is, the community advisory board should be doing sponsorship, and then that could get rid of the insurance requirement. And I only put it for these high intensity events. Like if you're having a concert and it's a nonprofit wants to have their benefit concert there, and it's a big event with a lot of people. We don't have, if we say that we can not even have this, we can just say no. That's also an option. We can just say no insurance required. We could do something like IVRPD does, where their board can sponsors it and it waives the insurance requirement, or they take it on. I just didn't want to put that in for these interim policies because we only have 3 board meetings left, and I don't want someone's event then not, to be hanging on a board meeting happening. We could do it where we're not requiring insurance. So I didn't put that in as like, oh, this must happen. I just thought it was a good idea for the high intensity events, where again, a lot is going on. We don't have a lot of people to help, make sure it's a good, safe event. So insurance is at least a way to make sure that there's some sort of protection there, because we don't have people on the ground and as many eyes on things. And it's mainly, geared towards my thought of it is between now and January, not that much of the high intensity is going to even happen. And if it does happen, it'll be an established organization. But it's also not required. We can go with no insurance and just do the waiver. And that's, that level of risk and protection.
Well, and I guess partly what I'm asking is, what kind of insurance do we carry? And is it that we don't want to ever have to make a claim against our insurance, and so we want somebody else to share that risk? Because I mean, wouldn't both insurance carriers be called in if there was an issue anyway? It's conceptually, I don't really get it.
Yeah, we have pretty robust insurance. We pay around $20,000 a year for it. And our insurance has a pretty high coverage amount. I don't have the exact numbers right now, but we have, beyond the basic requirements that we have to usually sign to, sign the community center lease, we have, beyond those requirements there. So a claim, I think if something were to happen and only we had insurance, that claim would be probably filed against the district, but maybe, I don't want to suppose that. They would have signed a waiver though. So that is some level of protection, but you never know with these things. And there, if something really bad happens, again, I'm thinking these big events, like a huge concert, 70 people are there, people can get seriously hurt.
Not a huge concert.
Yeah. I'm not thinking like an art class would be the case here. And I'm thinking this shouldn't be the case. Like we should get into the sponsorship system, probably. And I don't want to require that of the future staff and board, but I think us getting into the system of, okay, we want to help co-host this event, so we're taking on the liability or taking it on, is a smart thing to do. But we can't do that right now. We cannot help share risk because, again, we only have 3 board meetings left, and to get something on for a board, or I mean, you could, I guess, delegate all that to me, but I don't know if I do that. I don't know.
We could say that we just don't require people to get insurance.
That's true too. Yes, no, that's an option too. I just put it in. I thought it was a good idea, but if we don't want any insurance,
well, I mean, it does seem to be the norm, and I understand that it's the norm. It's just I don't understand why it is the norm. It seems like overkill to me. But those are all my comments. Thank you.
Of course, and
the reason why it's the norm, I can answer that, Jonathan. It's a little bit more of a legal question than anything. It is having an apportionment of fault for the people who are doing the activity. So if you have a group that comes in and they are carrying on a certain activity, somebody gets hurt, they're going to sue everybody. So if you require insurance and have the district as a named insured, then it helps to have the situation for risk management and liability be that the group's insurance is the one that picks up the defense for the district. So instead of having the district's insurance be the primary carrier that's involved, we want to apportion the risk and the potential liability to the people who are actually engaging in the behavior or the whatever it happens to be that creates the likelihood for some type of an injury or a damage to occur. As separate from those situations where we're having people come in and the IVCC is not finished. The floor is not complete. There are other improvements that are not yet complete, but we're taking on responsibility. The district is, as a public agency, for the condition of this public property and going to extend an invitation to some groups who are saying, well, we're not going to be really using it very intensely. We just need a space. We need a roof over our heads, and we need 3 or 4 walls so we can put up some tables and do an art class. So in that type of situation, all we're going to require under this matrix is an indemnity provision that basically says you're coming in and the space is what it is. You're agreeing that you're going to use it for this purpose, and that's fine. You're going to be responsible for yourself, and we're going to be responsible for us, and leave it at that. So if for some reason somebody gets hurt because of condition of the property, then the district's insurance covers that. That helps to apportion. It helps to make the space accessible to people based on what they're going to be doing, how heavy of an impact they're going to be having on a community facility, and attendant to that, what the risk profile for that is. So the larger the event, the more intense the use, the more likely it is from a risk mitigation and risk management standpoint of people getting hurt because they are attending the activity, not because they are attending the activity at the IVCC. So as a result, we want the primary people to bear the risk to be the insurance company, the insurance provider for that group. But another thing that we're looking at is basically having groups added on as a rider to the district's insurance if they're smaller, if they're not as intense, et cetera. So the whole purpose is to create a continuum of use and a continuum of protection for the district, because in the end, remember, public dollars fund the district's insurance policy. So in any instance where we can shift potential risk and potential liability to somebody else, that is preserving public dollars for programming, that is preserving public dollars for services. It's not going to increase insurance premiums it's not going to paying out settlements if somebody trips and falls, for instance. So hopefully that addresses your questions a little bit better, Director Topliff. If not, I can.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
And I would just add one last thing is I think the majority, like the super majority of events would be medium and low intensity and not require insurance right now anyways. So.
Thank you for the questions, Director Topliff. I'm going to go to Director Deschler and then Director Freeman.
Thank you. I had a couple questions, but I just wanted to ask about the issue with insurance. So the IVCSD doesn't own the the CSD does not own the community center, right? But if someone is hurt at the at the community center, because of deficiencies in the condition of the center, i.e. the floors, the CSD is liable even though the CSD is not the owner of the facility?
It's based on our use agreement with the county. And essentially the way we have apportioned the fault is the district is responsible for what the district does. The county is responsible for what the county does or does not do. So depending upon the specific circumstances, liability may be borne by the district if the injury or the harm is associated with the district's programming, which is again why we want to shift responsibility from those who come in and use the facility to those people and away from the district. But under the current use agreement, it's a very simple, county is responsible for what the county is responsible for. If somebody gets hurt, they're responsible. The district is responsible for what the district does, which is the operations of the community center and certain maintenance requirements. But some of the bigger ticket items, the county has specifically said they're going to be responsible for. So in that situation, the indemnity would fall to the county.
Got it. Okay, that's helpful. So first of all, Jonathan, I think you just did a great job on this document. I know it's interim, but you put so much effort into it. And it's really easy to understand. And I love the matrix. I love the word matrix. So a couple things I wanted to mention. One is the security deposit. I guess I'd be interested in knowing the rationale for not having a security deposit not having a security deposit at all. I mean, I understand that could be a barrier for some people, but it seems like an event of 30 people, if there's anything that happens to the space, I just like to understand what your rationale is for not having a security deposit.
Yeah, it's just the sentiment I got from the board to keep it as open as possible. And, security deposit, we could make it very small, but even then might include, a study group from meeting in the room if they wanted to. It could, and also it's just an administrative hurdle. I know I put it for the high intensity. I really don't anticipate we'll get many. And with those groups, again, I think, we can start a tab. We don't have a way to collect money right now like that. We don't have we could just say you owe us 100 and, we don't actually collect the cash from them, but we don't have a system to collect cash and reimburse cash right now. And I put it for the high ones because, again, I think, a department at UCSB was doing something like program board wanted to have an event there. We could work with them to say, okay, program board, you owe us the insurance, the security deposit. Whereas with a private individual, it just might be harder to just administer that. So I think we should, it's something to consider in the future, just hard thing to administer for us right now.
Got it. And then last question, I think on the matrix, it may be helpful. I know you reference it below the matrix, but maybe to reference under mask with an asterisk, given that the district will be following policy from Santa Barbara County Public Health Department. And I think you have in there masks are required, but it may not be the fact when we go to a lower transmission level or whatever that is, when we're in a lower level of transmission, masks may not be required indoors. So I might just want to have an asterisk there.
Sounds good. Thank you. Yeah, I'll make that adjustment.
Thank you, Director Deschler. Director Freeman and then Director Bertrand.
Thank you. So to kind of a step back / out, I will say that My evaluation of this document and these policies today is based upon the premise that staff is trying to figure out how to very quickly have some people be able to use the space that we've all been dying to use for a long time without having the employee that is actually going to be in charge of all of this, without having felt that it had the time to, let's bring this to like a policy committee meeting and spend like, an extra month and a half, arguing about like all the nitty gritty details and everything. And it's like, let's just bring this to these explicitly interim policies to the board in order to get them approved temporarily. And so even to the extent to which I might look at something and be like, I don't know if that's optimal. And some of the issues, like actually, I'm really into this insurance thing, and I've complained about it many times over the years. But I'm just like, if this is easy and this works, and I don't think this is like egregiously bad, I am excited to vote yes on this. My questions today are largely based on reading the document, thinking, well, somebody's going to read this and they're not actually going to know what it means. And that's going to end up causing like a practical confusion on behalf of somebody or an argument. And so maybe we just like a wording clarifications. But like that insurance thing, I mean, we can spend a lot of time figuring out. I mean, I've looked at other places in California that they will have like a relationship with an insurance agency in order to allow people to pay through like the insurance fee to the district in order to have it tested. There's all sorts of cool things we could do maybe in January. So I've got a question about, actually this is a question I should know the answer to. Actually, this is actually first a follow-up question from somebody else's question. With our usage of the building, are we allowed to have for-profit things? Was that actually dealt with because I know the county had a restriction on that. Was that?
Yeah, so the restriction, and I had another comment on one of the earlier comments you had too, I wanted to answer, but the restriction on the buildings from the bonds that paid for them expired, I think, in 2019, 2018 in December. Okay. So that restriction is no longer there, and that's something that their district had communicated to us.
I'm confused trying to understand the boundary in between the medium and the high intensity events of having an exercise class as a medium intensity event. And I'm just imagining somebody trying to read that and be like, moderate to high physical activity. Okay, well, exercise class is not that. That's actually a low physical activity thing. Whereas a workshop, which seems like a high interaction type event, which is much higher interaction than a conference. I just feel like the examples maybe need some work because I read it and I'm like, I think people are going to get really confused in the boundary between high and medium events, and that causes differences in what they get to have out of us, such as, for example, the insurance requirement in the interim policy. I think it's a minor thing that to work out those examples. I'm curious, what is our fire code restriction on these areas? Because actually, when I started thinking about like, oh, you're talking about like having 70 people, I'm like imagining 70 people being crammed into some of these things. Like, is that we even allowed to do that?
Yeah, I don't have the number for the community center off the top of my head since I just don't look at that one as much, but the one in the community room is 88 is the occupancy maximum.
The room is 80. Okay, cool.
I know, it's kind of surprising.
Okay, this is like a silly little detail. It says that you have access to the restroom in the hallway. There is a sign, however, on the door that says no access to the hallway. And I don't know whether that sign is from the county or from us or from.
That sign is just from what's currently happening there, because they're doing the, they were doing coordinated outreach and different things for the homeless services. So, and it was exclusively doing that for a while, when the pallet shelter had come on. So that sign was just put in there to, keep the clients in the certain area. That was just an operational thing now.
You mentioned that let's read the clause. Users utilizing either space must require vaccinations of all guests. Well, either, but then it's and provide to the district a plan for doing so in order to confirm reservations. So it's just a wording glitch there. It's like it's either. I don't know what the two alternatives really are. But I'm curious what the a plan for doing so. Like I imagine that we're going to get to some kind of weird argument over what a plan for doing so is.
Yeah. So the either is means community room or community center.
I'm sorry. I did that obviously.
Okay. And yeah, it is a vague. I mean, I'm gonna have to deal with this as they come. It's it seemed like the board wanted to support vaccine requirement, but we cannot implement one just because it's takes a lot of work. And if we wanted to wait until that was complete, we wouldn't have reservations until then. So this seemed like a simpler way or faster way to meet that goal. And yeah, I'll just have to work with each group. I'm gonna ask them, what's your plan to do so? And they'll send me back. I mean, I think the ideal plan for them would be to collect vaccination requirement information on their guests and check vaccine cards at the door. And, I was just in an event a couple days ago, and I just had a picture of my vaccine card and showed it to them, and that seemed to work. And then they would advertise their events on our website as vaccination required. So it's not a perfect system, but I've realized that there's no perfect system. I've even gone to the most professional facility in LA, and you would think they have a complicated system. I also just showed the vaccine picture on my phone and got in fine. So it seems to be what a lot of organizations are doing.
Okay. I'm curious if Isla Vista Youth Projects satisfies the local to Isla Vista requirement as worded. I'm just curious about that border case.
Of course, they have Isla Vista in their name.
It's in their name, but but are they focused in it? Are they located in what you currently consider? Because we also sometimes we've gone back and forth on what actually is the designated place.
No, I mean there is the one. One of their main offices is not in the CDP, but their other facility is. So they do.
I was just curious about that border case. It's just like, all right, cool. Yeah. So those are my clarifying questions I had.
Sorry to jump in. I just wanted to clarify, but Isla Vista is central to their mission, so they also would receive a waiver.
Doesn't it require both as worded?
Yeah, I put and. We can make and or. Yeah, it's a simple change.
Cool. So those are my questions. Those are my questions about places where I just didn't understand exactly what the boundary on something was, or I wasn't sure if somebody else would have would end up in argument about it. I'm happy to vote yes on this today, and then argue bitterly about things like insurance requirements in January. So
thank you. I just wanted to one more point. I think the first thing you said was the distinctions between medium and high, and it is also going to be, I put these as examples, but yeah, they're not the best examples sometimes. They're just things I know have happened in this space. And I didn't want to preclude the exercise classes from coming back by having them be seen as a high intensity thing and grouped with other things like a concert. So determinations like that, we're like, well, there are things that we want to maybe help promote happening that have happened, like our Zumba classes. So it's a fine line and it's a judgment call, and we'll make that better over time, the distinction between high and medium.
All right, I'm going to go to Director Bertrand.
Thank you. So first off, Jonathan, great job with this. Ross, thanks for your help on this. This is a great interim solution and something that came together really quickly and is very high quality. I was interested in Director Deschler's questions and points earlier about the security deposit. I agree with what members of the board have said about how we don't want a security deposit to be a barrier for usage, especially among like student groups. And if you think about a lot of the groups that have traditionally used the IB community room without a security deposit requirement, I wouldn't want that barrier for any of them. But I just want to confirm that even if we don't require someone to provide a security deposit, we can still hold them accountable for any costs associated with their use if there's an issue, right?
Yes, it's actually in the policy, in this rules and regulations, which again is just a long list, A through S. It'll be reoriented in the future, but there's one of them in here that says that your damage to the space, we will bill you for it.
Yeah, so I think as long as folks understand that, we can have the honor system of folks attest that they accept that, and we don't require the deposit. But for the higher use, I do understand why we would require the security deposit. And my only other comment is if you make a chart based on this matrix to help users figure out what their responsibilities are, I think it would be good to have a line with cleaning and just yes across the bar, because I know you have that in the policy, but just so that everyone sees that as a responsibility. I think that
That's
would
a
be great.
point. Thank you. No, that's a really good point. I will put cleaning in here. I'll put that under reservations.
Cool. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments from board members? Well, seeing no others, I just really want to thank our staff for working on this. This is incredibly detailed. It's a lot to get together in a short amount of time so that we can open the doors as quickly as possible. And I really appreciate you making it a priority and moving quickly in such a detailed way. I think this document as presented is very good. And I appreciate the Director Topliff bringing up the issue of the fee-based events. I think that that's something that we should revisit how exactly we want to handle that in January once we have more permanent policies that we're considering. I think that for now it makes sense for us to disallow that just in the absence of having a easy way to determine whether the board's going to say sponsor something or waive a requirement to allow for something. I think it just makes the most sense. As far as the insurance requirements go as well, I feel the same way that others have expressed that I think we want to do everything we can to try and make it as easy as possible for folks to access the space and have fun, creative programming that everyone can enjoy in the community. I know we'll probably revisit this issue in January, and we'll have a good discussion about it. I will also say on the vaccine system, I too have been to a number of events and also hosted some events where I've used different booking systems for vaccines. I had one in particular that was very dependent on folks using their phone, and it had some pros, it had some cons. I don't know if technology is quite there for everything, but the great thing about Isla Vista is so many of our residents are very technological literate. So I think it's something for our staff to consider and continue to think about what the best way is to implement something like that. I think in a lot of ways, there's a great model right next door at UCSB with the green badges to check in, and obviously the verification system of folks that have been vaccinated. So there's a lot of things that we could consider. I like this system right now just to be simple, to establish a clear expectation that vaccines are required and that hosts have some responsibility in making sure that that is happening. Those, I think, are my only comments on this. I'll just add one more thing, which is I agree with Ethan that creating materials to help our users understand how to book and what the policies are and what their expectations are going to be super important. I also understand that we don't have our person yet to be able to implement that. But I think that will be really helpful just so that we don't have folks getting lost in confusion because these policy discussions can be a bit confusing. So again, I just really appreciate council and staff for working on this on such short notice to make it so that we can open this building. Very excited for that. I see a hand from Director Topliff. Go ahead.
I feel like we've made a few little minor tweaks to this, and perhaps we could just like run down the list of all those little things we've discussed, and then I'd be ready to make a motion to approve this.
Yeah, the tweaks that I have are, one of them is very minor, which is the organization committing the commitment to Isla Vista and or located in Isla Vista. And then we have a clarification that, we would comply with the county health orders, whatever they are. So kind of making it general that we will comply with all county health orders, and so do the hosts. I think those were the only
Did we also say that we're not going to have any fee-based users?
Oh, yes.
That we're not.
I'll make that a new rule and regulation that users can't charge fees of their guests.
And then we were also going to insert that line for cleaning in the matrix.
Yes, I just added that. Thank you. That's a good, thank you for getting them.
Thank
Well,
you. Keeping us on track.
so I think that was it. Were there other things that we felt needed to happen to this document? Well, then I am ready to make a motion to approve it.
Got it. Well, let's pause on that. I want to make sure we give the public an opportunity to first. But I'm glad you're eager, Director Topliff. I'm going to open it up for public comment. Any members of the public that wish to speak can raise your hand by hitting the raise hand button or putting something in the chat. I see a hand from Mark. Go ahead.
I don't want to be the what if fairy, but I think my only question is because I've seen this a lot in Isla Vista where bands will play in a garage, for an example, and then there will be people kind of watching the band outside of the garage. And in a circumstance where, and a band is playing inside the facility, anywhere from a 3 to 7 person band, while the audience is outside of the facility, let's say on the patio area of the building. I'm just curious if that's, I don't really understand like what sort of use that would be defined as. I know it feels kind of niche, but because I've seen it in Isla Vista several times, that's why I bring it up.
Yeah, well, it says small performances as medium and then concerts as high. So we'll work with the user to figure out what exactly they're doing.
Sounds like a band practice.
Yeah. So if it's only going to be, 20 people on the patio, less than 50, and it's a, band practice, we'll judge it. I mean, it's not a science. We will see how things qualify for these and test these policies out.
Got it. So the facility includes the patio for the rental agreement, or yeah.
Yeah, for sure. It says right here, the community center, its patio, 5 parking spaces, and the grassy area with a small amount of grassy area.
Got it. Thank you.
Thanks for those questions, Mark. Are there any other questions from members of the public or comments? All right, seeing none, I'll bring it back to the board. And I think Director Topliff was ready to make a motion.
I'd like to move that we adopt this interim policy about use of the community center with the modifications that we enumerated a minute ago.
All right, motion made by Topliff. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Flaherty. And Jonathan, do you think in the motion you can list out the list of modifications that were made?
Yes. Well, one of the cleaning one is a formatting one, since we already were requiring that, and I think that it's the no charging fees and the following all health orders.
And either or.
And the either or. Yeah. That might take a second to write all these out. I think the as amended, I mean, we've usually done as amended.
Okay, got it. That sounds good. Any other board comments or discussion? All right, then we'll go to a roll call vote.
Dr. Brandt?
Yes.
Dr. Flaherty?
Yes.
Dr. Bergman?
Yes.
Dr. Freeman?
Yes.
Dr. Dessler?
Yes.
Dr. Topliff?
Yes.
All right, motion passes unanimously. Excited for all those events to get started soon. So now we're going to move to our next item. And I apologize because I'm trying to get back to the agenda. That will be the request for proposals for Isla Vista Planning Report and Educational Workshop. So this is an item from our planning ad hoc committee that was set up. Myself and Director Flaherty and Director Topliff had a chance to meet and speak about some of these issues. and review the RFP recently. Director Topley, for clarity, is there anything that you want to add to start off this item?
Well, I'm just pleased that we've been moving ahead with this so quickly. I think that this is a really important thing for us to get done. And when you actually drill down into the details, there's a lot of things that have to be done and a lot of sequences that have to occur. So I'm really appreciative that we've been able to get moving on it so quickly.
Yeah, I'll also just add that it's really exciting to be looking at these dates and thinking that they're going to start coming up pretty fast too. And that to me is really exciting when looking through the document with both Carrie and Spencer. So it's really exciting that this fall is in motion and that this will all start happening really soon. So I'm excited.
Excellent. I couldn't put it better. So I'll hand it over to Jonathan to introduce this item.
Great. Thank you. So yeah, we have a really great, and I've lost count, the third request for proposals this fall that we're putting out. Let me put this in the chat. Oh, it looks like people are on. I'm gonna put it on the chat. The main page to look at is page 19, 20, 21 on here. That's where it says primary overview and objectives. So yeah, what our committee really came together to say is that our objective is to approve a master plan and to have an updated community plan and zoning for Isla Vista. And that this report's goal is to figure out what necessary changes we need to make to reflect the community needs and get through the Coastal Commission for approval. So the second goal is also to educate our district, our staff and our board members and the community on planning background, the master plan itself, and existing conditions. So that's really our goal here, is to have our consultant give us the information we need to achieve the approval of a master plan for Isla Vista. We really wanted, I think Carrie was really saying in our meeting, let's really make it explicit. Like, we have this very strong goal here. Other things that are part of this report are, one is having this workshop. It is a centerpiece of the proposal. It's having a workshop that helps kick off this process, where we can become more informed about, having the master plan explained to us, understanding the current conditions, and understanding how Isla Vista would be changed if the master plan were enacted. That was a very specific thing. What would the benefits be? What would the changes be if that happened? And then better understanding of the Coastal Commission requirements. And we know it's parking. I mean, that's what they've said. But to really get in depth on the nuances and the details of those requirements and what exactly we need to have on mind. And then to keep it connected to our, our legislation and our powers, as well as, how an area planning commission and alternatives to that, and how those would work with meeting this goal. Again, just like the STEP grant, the community engagement will be run by us, and the consultant will consult on that and participate as we need them to, but we will take care of making sure the community is aware and involved in this process. One thing we're going to do is a needs assessment on transportation services and housing, and that's kind of different than what we had originally put in what I had put in my staff report a couple months ago. But I think it's a really good change, and what we're looking at it is, transportation needs assessment we're already doing in a whole study, which will be, they'll be working together. But services and housing would be new features. Services, we meant, both business, nonprofit services, just things that people need to use, that, do they exist in Isla Vista or not? And then the housing assessment. Housing became a pretty significant part of this proposal in terms of getting information about housing stock, housing availability, housing utilization. We ended up putting in examples of data, even housing units projected to be lost as part of cliff erosion on Del Playa, and how we can make a plan to account for those potentially. So that's this proposal. I will say that we had sent it in to the county planning department to get some feedback, and they did send in some pretty good feedback. I wasn't able to incorporate it, but it's very minor, the feedback, but they seem pretty supportive. I mean, their feedback was mainly saying parking is the big thing you need to piece together. So we're pretty focused on that. And they also let me know that a lot of the housing data we might be looking for in the needs assessment might be prepared by them already. So that's also good news. But they did agree with our deliverables and our scope that yeah, like the proposed policy roadmap, they commented positively on that being part of our scope. So the planning department knows about this, and so we've checked that box of running it by them as well, because we'd be working with them to achieve the results of this report. That's it.
Thank you for that explanation, Jonathan. I'll open it up for the board. Are there any questions from the board? Director Deschler.
Yes, I have a comment and a question. So I'm very confused, Spencer, as you know, by all things planning. But I guess what the biggest thing that I'm struggling with is that it seems like this proposal is not that dissimilar than the parking proposal and the parking study. And what I worry about is that we're asking two different firms very similar information, which then when we get might really be very difficult for us to reconcile. And I just, so that's my concern is I know that there is some overlap between the two proposals. And I wonder if there's a way to have there be less overlap so that we're getting very, very clear information from this proposal and very clear information from the parking proposal. So that's my comment / question. When we brought this up at the board retreat, my thought was at the time was it is really confusing, this master plan process, and there's a whole history to it. And I remember going to the meeting with the county, and I remember thinking, could I be the only one that is completely in the dark here? And then I realized, no, I was not the only one. And in fact, there are a lot of people that don't understand the planning process. And so I think that that was kind of the genesis of thinking about this issue and maybe doing some education around that process to really help the board and also help the community. And so that's what I thought this was more about, but it seems like it has morphed into a kind of two-part, providing information on the process and providing information on the IV master plan, but then we're also going to be trying to get data from this entity as well, that whoever we hire. So it just seems a little confusing. The only other thing I wanted to make a comment on is that the local planning association in town, there's a group that does a marvelous job at like a 5 or 10 part planning 101 series. And I think that this, when we do get to the public education part of this, I think it would be worth thinking about how we can break up the education as not like a workshop, but maybe a series of workshops, because it's a lot of information and your eyes could really glaze over with too long of a workshop. That's all my comments.
No, thank you. I think the workshop is well taken. When we met, I think we were saying, let's do a whole weekend, but that might not be that might not be what works for everybody. So we can talk about how that plays out. And one thing I'd say is there is a distinction. I think this one, we did talk about this in our committee meeting, and if anybody on the committee wants to bring this up too, we can please help me clarify. But this report isn't going to say here are the changes you need to make specifically to the master plan to get it approved. It is more saying here's where changes can be made. So I know maybe this might not be worded the best now that I'm looking at it, but really we weren't imagining that this consultant by June will have made, here's the 10 changes we're making and writing them out. to the master plan. They might say, here's the changes we think you need to get it approved. And that might help drive the parking study result, where they say, you need to meet this parking requirement. And then we can take that to our parking study who's analyzing the amount of parking, and they can know that as part of their recommendations, they need to meet that goal. But yeah, I don't think we were thinking that this report would be, here's the list of changes and we've already made them and we're editing the document to help get it approved. It's more like educating us on here's what needs to be changed. So part of that's the workshop, but maybe going more in depth then and saying, we're looking at these elements of it. And if you wanted to make these different updates to reflect community needs, here's other updates you might need to consider. And I think we put in here towards the beginning is we want a process to develop these changes. So we want to have a process developed, not a process executed as part of this. So I don't think this is not going to result in the new master plan amendments. It's going to mainly be guidance for us on how to move forward.
I might also just add one thing to your question, Director Deschler, about the overlap between this and the other RFPs. And I don't really see there as being overlap. I think that the incorporation of the other things that are going on, including the STEP process and the parking process, was meant to make sure that that data is included and considered in their understanding of what we're looking for, not so much as to ask for a duplication of work or anything to that effect. And the goal of the existing conditions report is how can we really have a conversation about what we want to do planning wise in Isla Vista without knowing what the existing conditions are. So just my 2 cents on that. I think there's another hand up that I saw from Director Bertrand, and then I'll go to Director Freeman.
Sorry, no questions. Thank you.
Go ahead, Director Freeman.
Yeah, I think there's also Jonathan was looking at the wording of the items under the draft and final planning report. Also, the policy recommendations for how the board may take action in the future to further the planning related goals. I think it's kind of an ambiguous statement in the sense that it's policy recommendations might be establish a area planning commission or set up a certain kind of zoning conformance. We've got that ninth power. These name I'm forgetting. If things related to that, like working on our plan related goals, but when I read it initially, I think policy recommendations would be like a specific zoning change or like a put parking in this area, don't put it here, change it feels like it's from the wording policy recommendations to take action in the future to further the goals that we have, feels like the output of reports that would be a planning document as opposed to the help us understand what we need to do in order to begin to be involved in planning. So
yeah, I don't think the intention was for them to recommend specific zoning changes.
Yeah, I'm getting the impression that you don't want that, and I'm glad because I don't think many of us were that. It wasn't the goal. But when I read that, and if I'm like somebody who's reading this document, I feel like that's a difficult sentence to parse. So,
yeah, I think maybe we were thinking how to keep it. We don't know enough to narrow it down to exactly what might be best. So keeping it open to know what different policy recommendations are possible. But
honestly, the word policy is part of what's kind of getting to me. Like a roadmap. Like trying to think through what are the sequence of operations that our district would go through. It feels to be less like the policy decisions that we make relating to planning feel different from me than the tactics that we use in order to become involved in planning.
Would it be helpful to specify that the word policy relates to district policy?
If it said something like that, that would certainly, it would make it so that it wouldn't feel like somebody who's reading it, including initially myself when I read that sentence, would think that it would be like planning policy.
Yeah, I think we're using the policy in terms of like, oh, it's a policy making board. The board makes, policy could mean a lot of different things, but we can put district policy for sure. And the third bullet point, Jay, I think meets the other thing you were saying is development of a proposed policy roadmap to approve the Isla Vista master plan.
In fact, you used the word roadmap there. That's a good point. I might have accidentally.
Yeah.
But it's not about trying to add things. It's really about trying to fix that sentence to try to make it so it doesn't feel like
No, but we had the roadmap in originally.
I know. I don't know. I mean, the fact that you already had the thing that satisfied the word that I used in the document doesn't mean that my complaint is satisfied, because I'm really trying to fix the sentence I'm staring at, not also add to it.
But we added district if that looks better to you.
That certainly helps.
Any other questions from members of the board? All right, not seeing any. I think it's a good time to open it up for public comment. Any members of the public have comments they'd like to share? I see a hand from William. Go ahead, William.
Yeah, so are you guys working with the university in any capacity to like avoid a situation similar to what happened at the beginning of this year with the housing crisis? I know obviously there are two different bodies, but I feel like a lot of the issues, especially in Isla Vista, have a lot to do with the student population. So
I can take a stab at answering your question. It might be a little bit more helpful if you could get a little bit more specific.
Yeah, sorry. So I just mean, like, are you guys working with like the university administration to like get statistics for like amount of students that are going to be expected like at the university and stuff like that, and then using that information, or can that information be used, I guess, in future planning, or are you guys planning to, I guess, try to liaison a little bit more with the university for either like student body statistics or just other information similar to that?
Jonathan, do you want to try and speak to that?
Yeah, well, of course, I mean, all that information is relevant to a planning document is population projections. So, and students are, a large part of the population here. So we would definitely look at population projections and, housing needs to meet that population. That's part of, what's our housing stock? That's what the board added. I mean, I originally did not add in that specificity, but at the last meeting, board said, oh, let's do that housing analysis piece to this. So we would definitely be looking at how many people might be here in the future and how many units of housing are needed to house them.
Great, thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks for answering that, Jonathan. Thanks for your question, William. I'll add just specific to the existing conditions report that are mentioned in the proposal are analyzing how many housing units we currently have, which ones are utilized, which ones are not, how many people live there, and just different measures of density, and also how many housing units we're projected to lose as cliff erosion continues and with the bluff policy, more units are closer and closer to getting red tagged as well for being unsafe. So those are really good things for us to take into consideration and try and collaborate as much as we can with UCSB. Any other comments or questions from members of the public? All right, well, seeing none, I'll close the public comment period and bring it back to the board. I see a hand from Director Freeman. Is that a question or a comment?
Very quick comment. Yeah, certainly the output of an eventual master plan process or any work that is done in policy on planning is something that would affect the housing stock in the area. And so this is the path by which our board is looking at figuring out how to, at least is my impression personally, the path that our board is, that our board could take in order to get to a place where we could actually have influence over housing crises. So.
Appreciate that clarification, Jay, or addition. And I'll also add to that there's no county or there's no county land use oversight for what UCSB does with its land. So independent of what's going on there as far as oversight goes. With that, if there are no other questions or comments, are we ready for a motion on this? I see a nodded head. Anyone want to make a motion?
I'll make that motion to release this proposal for a consultant to help us move ahead with our evaluation of the current master plan and efforts towards creating a new master plan for Isla Vista.
All right. Made by Topliff. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Deschler. Any further discussion? I see a hand from Ethan.
Yes, thank you. Well, I've been carefully following the discussion and all the details, and since it is so focused on the specific Isla Vista master plan process, which ultimately is within the jurisdiction of the county, I am going to recuse myself from this decision, given my employment. I've been closely following, and with the information I have, I think that's the best thing I can do. So thank you.
Thank you, Director Bertrand. So there's a motion on the table. Any further comments from board members? All right, we'll go to a roll call vote.
Director Brandt,
Yes.
Director Flaherty,
Yes.
Director Freeman,
Yes.
Director Deschler,
Yes.
Director Topliff.
Yes.
Excellent. Motion passes 5-0 with one recusing. All right. With that, next we're going to go to item 4.6, Resolution 21-8, AB 361, subsequent adoption of AB 361 previous. And I'll hand it over to Jonathan.
Okay, this is an easy one. We are just re-upping our options for virtual meetings. It's just a renew of the resolution we passed a month ago, or subsequent adoption. And we need to do these every month from now on if we wanted to keep that ability.
So move.
All right, there's a motion on the table from Topliff. Is there a second?
I second.
All right, is there any public comment on this motion? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the board. And I'll just add, I think our intention, just from myself and Jonathan talking, sort of looking forward to the future of our meetings, is to sometime in the month, either in the month of November or December, try and come back and do a hybrid meeting, because I think we are a bit more set up with the internet in the space to where we could make it work this time. But of course, this resolution gives us the option to use all available tools. So just an update on that. Okay. So seeing as there's no public comment, no board discussion, I think we'll go to a roll call vote.
Director Brandt,
Yes.
Director Flaherty,
Yes.
Director Bertrand,
Yes.
Director Freeman,
Yes.
Director Deschler.
Yes.
All right. Motion passes, I think. I think my internet cut out there for a second. So with that, we will move out of action items into reports. First, do any board members have reports they'd like to share? Seeing, oh, I do see a hand. Director Bertrand, go ahead.
Yeah, I would just say Jonathan, Spencer, and I presented at a seminar at UCSB yesterday on civic engagement. It's a year-long course hosted by Doctors Katya Armstead and Viviana Mersano. I understand Director Deschler will be presenting there in the future. It was an awesome experience. A lot of folks who are doing great work in Isla Vista And it was really good to have that engagement with the community. Also, myself and Director Flaherty presented at the Associated Students Senate meeting about a week and a half ago. And myself and Director Brandt presented at the UCSB Campus Democrats. So lots of outreach to students who are back on campus, which has been really exciting. That's it.
Thank you, Director Bertrand. I'll give a report. So at the County Board of Supervisors meeting last Tuesday, the board was considering priorities for the American Rescue Plan funding that they had received from the federal government. This potential source of funds for improvements is something that Jonathan and I had spoken on a couple of occasions with the CEO's office about, just in our discussions about the future of the buildings and the renovations and repairs that are outstanding there. And the board staff recommended that the consideration of the community center project be considered in their hearing in April for the second tranche of ARPA funding. This would be $562,000 for improvements. In addition to that, the project is still under consideration to make sure that it's eligible by the county staff. Based on just my hope, I guess, and my guess from looking at the guidelines, I'm very hopeful that it will be, because Isla Vista is by the equity and in poverty measures, one of the areas where that funding could be used. And so I'm very hopeful, but I just wanted to share with the board. I spoke at the Board of Supervisors just as an individual, thanking them for considering the allocation and considering the project's eligibility. And so, yeah, just wanted to give an update on that. I think Ethan mentioned a couple of presentations. I'll add one more. So myself, Ethan, and Jonathan presented to Dr. Viviana Marsano and Dr. Katia Armised's leadership class yesterday. And it's really all about civic engagement and leadership in our community. And I think we got to have a great conversation about different services that our district provides and different ways that folks can get involved in the community to try and envision the world that we want to see in reality. So it was a great time, and I think we all had a great time speaking. So, end of my report. Any other board members have reports they'd like to give? Director Deschler.
I'll just mention that since this is the last meeting that we're going to have before Halloween, I just wanted, this might come up with Jonathan, but if so, I'll steal his thunder. But our community engagement director, if that's her title, Sydney, has done a remarkable job on the IVCSD website. It looks really good. It's a catalog of kind of all the activities that are going on for this week and this weekend. And so I just wanted to just give a shout out to Jonathan and to Sydney for the work they've done to really be able to tell people what's happening around Halloween, and to thank them for their efforts. And I also wanted to mention that there is going to be a concert at UCSB. It's going to be in Stork Plaza. It'll be an outdoor concert, and that was up in the air for a little bit, but it's now nailed down, and that's going to be Saturday night. So I just wanted to mention that as well. But all that's information on the IVCSD website.
Excellent. Thank you for that update, Director Deschler. Any other board members have reports? Director Flaherty.
I'm not sure if this is super loud, but I suggest everyone gets their booster shots. They're becoming widely available. I just signed up for mine at Rite Aid. I'm really excited. And so I'm really suggesting everyone, all community members, do that. We did a great job getting our vaccinations for the start of school. And I'm really proud of our community for that and for staying safe. And as we enter this holiday season, I think it's really important that we stay as safe as possible, so that we can see our family members and not have to worry too much. So I'm just suggesting that. I'm sure I have other committee reports too, but for a personal report, I just wanted to mention that.
Excellent. Thank you for that, Director Flaherty. Next, we're going to move to reports from standing and ad hoc committees. Any committees have reports they'd like to share? I see a hand from Director Bertrand. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you. Well, building off of what Director Teschler was speaking about before, on the Halloween side, we've really done a good job. We have a full weekend of activities for folks in Isla Vista, including our partnership with the Isla Vista Food Co-op for their awesome costume contest that will be hosted at their space, which we're really looking forward to. There's been a lot of outreach done in the community that's continuing to be ongoing. Additionally, we are co-sponsoring 2 other events. St. George Youth Center is having a pumpkin carving contest that's open to the community, and the EVPLA office is having their annual Haunt the Loop event, trick-or-treating for kids around the business area, and we're co-sponsoring that as well. On top of that, we're doing a lot of outreach to community members on just what to expect for Halloween, how to have a good time, and how to stay safe. So overall, given the circumstances of this weird year, and so many people back in IV and wanting to do things after the lockdown, I think we're in really good shape. So just want to thank everyone for that.
Thank you for that report, Director Bertrand. I think our report from the planning group was today. Any other committees have reports they want to share? All right. Seeing none, we'll move to report from District Council.
No report tonight.
Thank you, Director District Council. Now, report from General Manager.
Great. A couple things. So, community engagement. Sydney could not be here again today because she has been waking up at 5 o'clock in the morning to do public engagement training every day last week and this week. So she's done on Friday, but she says it's the best training she's ever been to. So the funds that you all approved was really put to good use, and she's learning every day like specific things to improve our own processes and all that. So it's been really worth it. We also had last week an accessible meetings workshop that we hosted with the Independent Living Resource Center. Catherine was there, and we had 26 others in the community who are part of our STEP grant there. We did learn a lot. We're going to start hoping to implement some of those tools to help make our meetings more accessible. Just simple things, even like attaching the agenda as a Word document, not a PDF. That we can do to help make our meetings more accessible. And yeah, you heard a lot about the Halloween promotion, and the door hangers launched today to every door in Isla Vista, and we've got social media ads. So that's going well. Nothing major to report on the compost collective. Things are going great there with the new piles and just getting used to that. We're starting to look at, now that we have more capacity, how to add more houses, and our sign up for bucket collection for drop off is now more formalized. So in the past, people would just drop off their compost and there would be no record of what was done before we took over management of the St. Mike's pile. And now we've purchased a scale and signage and different ways for people who drop off their compost to weigh it, and we can collect that data. So we can just have more data about how much households in Isla Vista are composting, and it's like more users for free. We don't have to pick it up from them because they want to drop off. Ivy Beautiful, I think I put this in my email about Public Works. County Public Works is collaborating with us a lot more on different Isla Vista Beautiful initiatives, from red curbs being painted to getting them a direct line from us on C-Click Fix to hear road and sidewalk issues. So we're really excited about that because that was our original pitch in 2018 to them, and they weren't ready yet, and now they are ready. take that on. So we're really excited. The board, approved funding for additional accounts on SeeClickFix. So they'll have an account, and residents who have issues can now submit directly to the county soon once we get it set up. So that's a big change, big improvement to Ivy Beautiful. And we still have only one worker there. They're still in the interview process to add back workers. We had some people resign. So we have one worker there right now, and they are focusing a lot on trash issues. But I saw them out in front of my apartment the other day, riding down, collecting trash on their bicycle. So they're focusing a lot on that. Interpersonal violence investigator, I just got the report for that. Covina has her hands full. I think she has over 11 cases, 11 or 13 cases in September. She's actively working on sexual assault and interpersonal violence cases. So not as much work on being able to do outreach, but she's handling a lot of cases right now. The next thing, the rental housing mediation program, we've been getting a steady stream of requests. Still the issue where we never really hold a mediation, but a lot of our users who submit a request for mediation say that just submitting the request helps solve the problem in their household. So it has a role in that way, where just the fact that we're present helps cool down issues sometimes. And I presented a housing panel at UCSB with Community Housing Office on mediation resources last week. So that was recorded and is on our website too. One thing I'm going to start working on in the next week or two is opening up the applications again for the Community Advisory Board for the community center, which we have to do to get these interim policies updated. So we had at-large seats and we had nonprofit and business seats that we'll need to refill now. And I'll go and consult with the other groups who had appointed representatives like UCSB and AS and such to, ratify those or to re-up those. So that's the community center and room. In terms of the facilities themselves, there was preventative HVAC, air condition maintenance yesterday. It was inside, so not in the rain, but it was at 9 a.m. And we received a request from the county to delay our facility assessment report, but I'm going to move forward and just saying we want to do that now instead of later, but just wanted to make sure you all were aware. Anyone has objections, let me know, but I'm going to just say we want to make that happen now and not wait. STEP grant, like I mentioned earlier, we had our first meeting today with the consultant and our project committee. It went very well. We have our first workshop. So the workshop that kicks off the public process for the STEP grant is scheduled is November 17th at 6 p.m. And the save the date's coming out tomorrow. Sorry, November 17th at 6 p.m. We picked that date and time because that would be the time that would work best for a lot of users. For example, Ivy Youth Project set 6 p.m. Usually Wednesdays would be good for families to participate, not later than 6. So we had a process to pick that, and we're working on data collection now for the existing conditions report for the STEP grant. So if you have ideas for data you'd like to see collected, we're in the open brainstorm period. We're just putting the whole list together, and some are already being worked on, and we're adding to the backlog. So love to hear any ideas on transportation-based data collection. A couple other things. The Halloween grant program, we're going to spend around 11,000 out of the 13,000 that was allocated. Outreach ended up costing more than projected because prices just went up for, I was using past invoices to project the cost, and prices have gone up on a lot of things. Our door hangers, for example, $1,000 more. But we're in budget, so we're all good from all the proposals. So we're good with that. And last couple things. Last meeting I said I was applying for COVID-19 relief funds. This meeting, I will tell you, we applied for 53,000, and we should know within the next month and a half, I think by early December, on a decision. So and then the funds will be released to us by January. So we have I think we have a good shot at getting 53,000. What made that up was our food distribution programs, the summer programs for the kids didn't qualify. One of them didn't because it was after June 15th, but one was before. So we got that one in. Our Halloween at home, I put in cleaning costs. So it added up to 53,000. So if we're awarded that, that's additional funds for us to use this year on different projects. And our consultant, our AGM consultant, we've been working on how they're going to deliver to us what they're going to do and work on. So they're in motion right now on helping me deal with the Family Medical Leave Act issues we have. And they will have a proposal for a 457B retirement plan at our December meeting. And they will also have credit card policies at our December meeting. And they are taking on hounding the credit card company to get our card. So they're working on that, and they'll have a system for our credit card use developed for us to approve in December. And just a couple of things coming up at our board meetings: audit, Spring Festival, RFP, the 805 Healthy Communities Coalition, which we're a part of, asked to make a short presentation as a yearly update. So those are just some things coming in the next couple months. But the end of the year is coming, where we have to approve our new calendar for next year, and our organizational meetings and committee appointments and all that. All those business organizational items are coming up in 3 meetings. So keep in mind things related to the calendar you might want to let me know about.
Excellent. Thank you for that report, Jonathan. Lots going on. Do any directors have questions for Jonathan?
Well, no questions, but I'd just like to give kudos to Jonathan. You're doing a superhuman amount of stuff, and you're doing it so well. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
I definitely echo that sentiment. And thank you as well. Great to hear that Sydney's getting a lot out of the trainings. That sounds not fun to have to wake up that early. So glad that they're good. Yeah, so much good stuff. Very excited about expanding C-Click Fix's options as well. And just many good things going on. If there's no other questions, I think we'll close reports. And our next regular meeting date will take place on November 9th at 6 p.m. on Zoom and/or in the community room at 970 Embarcadero Del Mar. Do we have any future agenda items that folks want to bring up? All right, seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move.
I second.
Made by Topliff, seconded by Freeman. Any last public comment or board comment? All right, let's go to a roll call.
Dr. Brandt?
Yes.
Flaherty?
Yes.
Bertrand?
Yes.
Freeman?
Yes.
Deschler?
Yes.
Topliff?
Yes.
All right. Thanks, everyone. We'll see you in November.
Bye.